Good afternoon and morning, everyone. Welcome to our second session of the day, Portfolio and Audition Guidance. If you were on our previous session with our student panel, that was a really amazing panel. They had really impressive students. I'm not just saying that because one of them was mine, but um, all right. Seems like the numbers are leveling off a little bit. So we'll go ahead and introduce ourselves. Again, you're in the portfolio and audition guidance session. My name is Will Abraham. I'm the regional manager for North America at Goldsmiths, University of London, based in Brooklyn, New York. And I'm joined by my colleagues who will introduce themselves.
Hi, my name is Gabriela Mendez. I'm with Middlesex University, London, and I serve as their Americas and Caribbean Regional Manager. I'm based right outside of New York City as well.
Hi, everyone. My name's Maddie Lomprey. I am a international officer for Edinburgh Napier University, and I'm based in Madison, Wisconsin.
All right. So before I start, I will just say that welcome. You're being presented by the three British universities. So while we will be speaking broadly about creative degrees abroad, our experience and many of our examples will be about UK universities. And if you have any questions, please pop them in the chat as we go. We'll answer them at the end. All right, so first of all, why study a performance or a creative degree abroad? This is a question that many parents might ask, or you'd be asking yourself. And the truth is that there are more than there are many reasons to study abroad. So for example, it's 3 or 4 years to study in Europe and in many countries abroad, for example, in the UK and in many parts of Europe. Students will focus on their creative degree without having to take gen eds, so they become specialists in their field. And this is all while at oftentimes significant lower tuition. Students get international exposure at world-class institutions with similar or even higher rankings than many universities in the US, which might have a higher tuition. So that's definitely something to consider. And these countries value the creative industries and creative degrees. And this is a thriving industry. For example, and again, just popping the UK, the sector contributed over 120 billion pounds in gross value added in 2022, which is almost 6% of the UK's total GVA. And then there are intangibles, as I like to call them, which is everything students gain from experience apart from academics. So their careers, it's the development of cultural awareness, it's the ability to take criticism, it's resilience, it's self-advocacy, even things like time management and how to navigate public transportation. So these things like adaptability, many more transferable skills should their careers shift. And moving on to the third slide. So let's have some definitions. Okay, another question that is very often asked by students and that you might also be wondering is, should I study at a university or a conservatory? And the reality is that this depends on the desired outcome. But I'd like to make the case in favor of studying at a university. So while conservatories do prioritize performance and professional training, teaching is more personalized and intensive, and it is more performance oriented. Well, universities have a better balance of academics and performance, which again, should students' career path take them to an adjacent discipline, is something that they can rely on. At university, students also have a good balance of bigger lectures and smaller seminars. They do perform, but in comparison to conservatories, it's for a less amount of time in the day. And of course, there is a stronger emphasis on academics. Finally, as a reminder, while we don't use the term BFA, a BA, which is Bachelor of Arts, a BMUS or BDes, is an absolutely equivalent qualification. So one isn't necessarily greater than the other. All right, and with that, we will pass with my colleague.
All right, so now I'll talk a little bit about academic structure. Again, this is also broadly across Europe, so trying to be pretty broad with the info here. Some schools will offer foundation years, so if students don't meet entry requirements or they maybe need a year of focused English language instruction, we'll offer foundation years to kind of get them up to speed, and then oftentimes provide that pathway into a full degree program. European degrees often won't teach gen eds, kind of what Gabriela was saying, like we will really streamline your education. So students, if you have an art student who really doesn't want to take math, I myself was that person, you would thrive in an environment in a European arts degree. However, the academics are much more independent and self-directed. So students that already have that streak of independence, they really want to build their own program. You can really get what you want out of that degree. You'll see there's also bigger lectures and smaller seminars, particularly for those art students. So you're getting much more one-to-one communication from your professors. And again, that really kind of helpful guiding that will help students build their art craft further. Grading will also have a higher emphasis on coursework and projects in those arts degrees versus other programs that might use exams as like their primary touch points. But again, arts, we want to see your growth as an artist or musician or actor and so on. All right. Now I'll talk a little bit about the admissions process. So again, trying to encapsulate different perspectives from all universities here. So some universities might be flexible with test scores or GPA for a student that has a really strong portfolio. Again, it really depends on the school. For a truly outstanding portfolio or audition, it's possible that the minimum requirements could be flexible. But this would typically only pertain to one aspect of the application. So if a student has a softer standardized test score or a GPA that's kind of hovering around the minimum, that might be a little bit more flexible as with a strong audition or portfolio component. But we would encourage you and your students to not assume that these exceptions would be made and to be familiar with entry requirements as you're applying. Grades and standardized test scores or the portfolio could also be used as a deciding factor between candidates, especially in these more selective programs where we're vying for a select set of spots. Additionally, this could also be a deciding factor for any additional funding or scholarships. And then lastly, some cases students may have the opportunity to audition ahead of applying. So these opportunities are a really great way to see what universities a student is likely to be admitted to. You can kind of get a feel for the faculty and what they're looking for in their students. Attending these auditions is a great way to also have positive marks in your admissions file before we even get transcripts, letters of recommendation in there. So just a way to kind of add a little more oomph to your admissions file. And then talking a little bit about after you apply as well, check and see how the university accepts materials. Some will have a link that you can use, email, Dropbox, or an internal portal. This will be the best way where if there's something else that the university needs from you, you should be communicated to either via email or through that internal portal. Make sure you're checking your email regularly. This will make sure that students, if you're missing any pieces of your audition or portfolio or any other part of your admissions piece, will let you know there. If your school gives you a university email, also make sure you're checking on that. And then lastly, just be familiar with the enrollment deadline. Try to apply at a strategic point and know when you're going to be getting that response. It'll help align students' expectations and will help, on the university end. So we're not just routinely reminding everybody when those acceptances will come out.
All right. Hope you're still with us. So now that we're getting into the nitty-gritty of portfolios and auditions, as your students are kind of building those portfolios, you'll have to kind of tailor them to the actual school you're applying to. So despite the fact that a lot of people might believe that, an art degree is frivolous, it's really, really hard to get that portfolio really right for all the schools you're applying to as a student. Taking Goldsmiths as an example, we're much more conceptual. We don't care as much about the technical quality of a student that they might have. It's much more about their ideas. We're also more into quality over quantity. So a lot of students think they need to present like a large breadth of work or really deep and great technical skill into one area, but that's not always the case, especially on a school by school basis. So it's really important to kind of read all of those portfolio requirements very thoroughly. It's also really important for students to kind of tell an overarching story or convey a narrative, especially if it's more personal. A lot of the interview stage uh, interviews that you'll do for an art or design program will really interrogate why students are making the choices they're making, why they're doing certain things in their practice, what's influencing them, these sort of things. So it's really important that students kind of have that prepared as they go into an interview stage with a portfolio. It's also really important that during the portfolio stage, you're properly lighting your work. It's one of the biggest tips I give to students when I do portfolio review. It's really great to have an amazing piece of work, but if it's not well lit and well presented in the photograph, it doesn't really come out well. And that will kind of negatively affect the portfolio. So it's really important that students are learning and acknowledging they have to light their work and really present it well to the portfolio review team. It's also important, especially if students are doing AP Studio Art of any kind, that they don't fully recycle their portfolio from AP Art into a college portfolio. While sometimes that may be okay, I would say for the vast majority of schools, just reusing the same portfolio is not going to fly. Typically, the studio art program is very particular about what they're looking for and how the portfolio is designed. So if you're doing a portfolio review, I've seen AP Studio Art portfolios and portfolio review, and that's totally fine. And we can pick certain ones they might want to include in their university portfolio, but I would just kind of caution against copying and pasting essentially their studio art portfolio into a university portfolio. And also, one kind of pro tip is many universities around the world also do attend National Portfolio Day around the country and Canada. So if students do wish to get a sort of in-person take on their portfolio, I would encourage them to look at those events that are going around all around the country this fall and every fall. And for music and theater auditions, it's going to be really important, again, to follow instructions really carefully, and also choosing selections that are within the student's range and ability. It's always discouraging, I would say, when a student chooses a really challenging piece that they might not have nailed, because it's always better to kind of be, choosing things within your ability than beyond. It's also important to use a quality camera, have a simple background. Again, lighting is really crucial, and sound. It's always also discouraging when you can barely hear the student in the audition video. So if they are not auditioning live, all these things are really important to kind of take into consideration. Again, you are going to want to have to convey emotion and possibly a personal narrative, depending on what kind of portfolio it is. For music portfolios and auditions, if they are including any kind of songwriting or composition piece, it's important that that's also easily accessible along with their video links. I typically would also recommend students looking into in-person offerings if they're available. Occasionally, universities will come to major cities around the country to provide auditions, or they'll do unified auditions through theater, which occur in New York, Chicago, and LA. So these are also really good ways for students to meet faculty, get a sense of the program, and also have the chance to audition live in front of a faculty member or a representative of the college. And some last kind of tips and tricks. Again, I've mentioned a few times, but it's the thing that I think is the most easy to have students trip up with is following instructions and paying attention to deadlines. A lot of universities will give really clear portfolio and audition guidance on their websites, or they'll send it to the student after they apply. But it's important that they really pay attention to those, especially for programs that are really, really competitive. A really easy way for students to be weeded out is if they miss a deadline or don't follow instructions. So that's a really important kind of piece to keep in mind. Again, strong audio and video quality is really important. Students should be fully prepared to talk about their work. We do recognize this might be the very first time they're talking to someone about their work who isn't a teacher or a parent or a friend. So having those practice rounds with students and practice interviews might be really helpful. Asking them things like, what current artists influence you, what artists throughout history influence you, asking about why they're making certain choices with their medium, or if the subject matter is really provocative or thought-provoking, why they've chosen it and what makes it personal to them. If, various things that you might want to try with them before they go into an interview stage with a portfolio. Also practicing speaking and talking about yourself confidently. The biggest thing for artists, musicians, theater makers, practitioners is that they are their biggest advocates. If the student themselves isn't confident and projecting confidence to the interviewer or to whoever's reviewing their portfolio or audition, it's going to really negatively affect their application, because they have to be their own biggest boosters and their own biggest marketers. These are really challenging degrees that really force you to either be a freelancer or really boost yourself and promote yourself. So those are all really good skills to learn at high school. Lastly, checking email regularly and responding promptly is kind of an obvious one, but would be the last piece. And I guess the last one is making sure that the programs align with what their goals are. So ensuring that there's the desired outcomes match the skills. And certain programs will, be more conceptual versus more technical. Some might be more, production based for music versus composition or songwriting. So really kind of looking at the granular information about each course and ensuring that the student will get out what they want of it. That will be kind of the last piece of advice I would give.
We compiled some resources for you here as well. So we have a subject matrix of some of the AIRR-NA universities. We'll say we did not get everybody on this list. So if there are other schools that you're interested in, still check on those. We also have a matrix of our summer programs as well. So that's a good way to kind of get a taste of what a full university degree might be like for some of your students, especially those art-focused programs. And then lastly, checking out offerings from the university themselves. So whether that be student societies, that's a good way to see, what art, theatrical, and music productions they're putting out each semester. And then having arts-focused visit days. So maybe there's an opportunity to audition or just to meet faculty and connect with some current students. And then lastly, of course, your regional representatives, whether it's dropping an email or a call to us or catching us while we're out on the road, we're more than happy to help kind of talk about our admission processes and our arts programs, of course. All right. And then oh, Gabby, sorry.
Go ahead.
We wanted to list our arts programs at each of our universities, and then we can also open up this time for some questions.
Yes, and we have about 5 minutes for questions. So I will say that if we don't get to your questions, please join the International Admissions Ask Me Anything. That's the International Admissions AMA happening on Thursday at noon Eastern time. So let's get started with a couple of questions. I'll just start with the first one. A student who typically goes on a tour as a performing artist, do you make any special arrangements? Who would like to answer that? You're on mute, Will.
Sorry. Is this, I guess, yeah, I'm not sure like if they're performing while they're in their degree or after, but I actually have had a student, one of my New York students a few years ago was in a band who performed, and she's been read about the New York Times, which is like, it's a pretty big band. They're called Pretty Sick. And she, as a student in the UK, unless it's an integral part of the degree, unfortunately, you can't be a paid performer on a student visa. But that being said, if you are like a touring performing artist, there are ways to kind of pause your studies, or it will really depend on the university and how flexible they are. I would say like Goldsmiths in general is quite flexible for our theater and music students if they do get a job while they're in the program. So it really will just depend on the university, I think. Sorry, it's kind of a cop-out question, but for answer.
That's okay. I think this is an important one. It says occasionally parents want to know whether colleges prefer IB portfolios over AP or the opposite. Any thoughts? At least for Middlesex, and I want to say that for most of us, it's either or. I mean, IB, AP works fine. So if your student is on an IB track, they can continue there. If they're on an AP track, they don't have to move to an IB track to be admitted. So I think that was a really good question too. Another question. Generally, for most schools, is portfolio likely to be 10 pages or 20 pages / projects, or can you generalize so students can prepare before researching each university's very specific requirements? I think, Will, you were talking about this earlier in your slides.
Yeah, I would say, again, it will kind of depend on the university. I mean, at Goldsmiths, it will also depend on the program you're applying for. So like for creative writing, we would say about like 20, 25 pages. For a design or art program, usually like 12 images or projects. So I think it really just depends. I would say, keep in mind that tutors, or I should say, faculty who are reviewing these are, stretched for time a little bit or crunched for time. So I would kind of think that you would not give a faculty member more than like 20 minutes to review each portfolio or audition. Like that's probably how much time they're taking with each one. So I would just maybe keep that kind of timing in mind when you're creating a portfolio. Is that fair? Would you guys say?
Right, yeah. Next question real quickly. Are performance students typically eligible for work visas for some number of years afterwards to be paid by European organizations? What do you think, Maddie?
Yeah, so again, sort of will depend on the country and the visa situation. I know, especially at my university, we focus a lot on making industry connections. So hopefully there's that potential for visa sponsorship. But the question disappeared. Let's see.
Oh, I'm sorry. It must be on the
Okay.
answered tab. If you look for it there.
Yes. So again, it really depends on the visa situation, but if you're able to find that sponsor, absolutely. But I do believe we'll have a bit of a period after graduation where students are able to work, especially in the UK I think it's currently changing a little bit. I think it's going down to 18 months.
It hasn't been confirmed yet. Currently it's 2 years. It may move to 18 months, but yes, there is that allowance.
Yeah.
And same with many countries in Europe. I want to say all of them.
Yeah.
But of course, just hold me responsible for the UK. And I think we have one last question. Actually, I do want to clarify for those of you wondering where the subject matrix is. That is on another tab, and will we circle this presentation out to attendees?
We're not actually sending slides, but the recordings will be available after September 2nd on our website. The subject matrix will be on our website today, I promise. I'll get it back on there.
All right. Well, this is it. I'm sorry if we didn't get to your question. Again, please attend the Admissions Ask Me Anything happening on Thursday. And I also want to plug in our upcoming events. If you are going to NACAC, please, we have a conference reception on September 18th. We also have a Texas tour, East Coast tour, and West Coast tour coming up. So please sign up for those and stay tuned for more. Any other remarks? No? All right. Well, thank you so much for joining, and please continue enjoying the Global Guidance Summit.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.